I was a devoted husband and father, living a seemingly perfect life until the day Becky dropped a bombshell. She had been cheating on me for a year with the help of our own daughter, Holly. The betrayal was like a dagger to my heart. As I began to uncover the extent of their deceit, I found hidden accounts, secret meetings, and lies that spanned our entire marriage. The path ahead was fraught with anger, despair, and tough decisions. But amidst the chaos, I found a glimmer of hope and a chance at a new life. This is my tale of devastating betrayal, shocking discoveries, and unexpected redemption. I played well. It wasn't the best round of my life, but I finished 18 holes with a score of just 7 over par. For the past few years, my friend Matt and I have been playing golf together a couple of times a month. He's about 10 years older than me. We met when my wife, Becky, and I moved into our current home 6 years ago. Matt is a big guy who talks a lot. He's in real estate and is doing well, though he has slow periods. His wife, Pam, a tall, thin blonde, stays home and takes care of their son, Chet. Chet recently turned 18 and is finishing high school before going to college. Pam and Becky became instant friends and met several times a week. Becky is also blonde with straight hair, usually looking great except when she wants a bit of curl and volume. Her hair falls just below her shoulders. She keeps herself in good shape. There are a few soft spots, but nothing more than you'd expect from a 41-year-old woman. To me, she is still the most beautiful woman in the world, or at least she was before all this started. Guys, you know how it is when you hear those words. We need to talk. Never before has a wife said those words and meant good news for the husband. So when Becky said them to me that fateful Saturday afternoon, I braced myself for bad news. We all do this. We try to guess what it could be. I didn't go into the garage, so my first thought was that something happened to her car, but that wouldn't be very scary. I make good money as an engineer, so if it was something tangible, it could be easily fixed, and she knew it. Then I thought it was something personal, like family. All our parents were alive, as were 3 of our 8 grandparents. Maybe something happened to one of them. Or perhaps it was our daughter, Holly. Holly was very close to her mother, and we often joked that she was a mini-me of my wife. She had Becky's straight blonde hair and a love of shopping. She had started dating a couple of months ago. She turned 18 and had a boyfriend named Dean, who seemed nice enough as far as I knew. There was no physical relationship between them, but perhaps fathers aren't always aware of such things. Could Holly be pregnant? That would explain Becky's gloomy tone, though it could be dealt with. Or maybe Becky is pregnant. Imagine being a father again at my age. I liked it the first time and thought I would continue to do so, but maybe Becky thought I wouldn't be happy with it. All of this went through my head in a matter of seconds, and I had almost convinced myself that one of the women in my life was pregnant. I sat down at the kitchen table across from my wife of 18 years. "Henry, my dear, you know how much I love you, right?" "Of course, Beck." I never doubted it for a minute. I tried to stay cheerful, not wanting her to be afraid to tell me about the new baby, which I was sure was coming soon. But doubt crept into my head. Why would she ask if I knew how much she loves me unless she was going to tell me something that would make me doubt it? "Henry, I love you with all my soul and always will. I look forward to us spending the rest of our lives together. This is what I always wanted." "Me too, honey. But I guess this wasn't meant to be a mutual admiration society meeting. What's the matter? Henry, we have been together for 20 years, 18 of them as husband and wife. I love you more and more every day. All this time I have happily dedicated my life to caring for you and our wonderful daughter. Except for some visits to friends, I asked for almost nothing for myself. Do you agree?" It was clearly not about Holly, but about Becky wanting something she thought I might object to. She never expressed a desire to have another child, and I was quickly losing confidence in this theory. "I agree, honey. You always put Holly and me first, though we encouraged you to make time for yourself." "Yes, and I know about it. This is one way to understand how much you love me and why I believe you will indulge me now." "Well, I'm listening. Henry, as you know, everything changes with age. Our bodies change, our energy levels change, our sex drive changes. You are a wonderful lover, Henry, and always have been. But you know as well as I do that as you age, you are less and less able to handle it. It's just a natural part of aging, and I understand that. I didn't like how things were turning out. Probably the last thing a man would want is for his wife to talk about his masculinity, or at least the lack thereof. I had a bad feeling. She continued, and I simply nodded that I understood what she was talking about. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, assuming it would be some solution to this problem. For me, it's the other way around. I find myself needing something almost every day. Don't you think I feel the same way, Becky? I love you and want you to be taken care of. But you can't completely fight biology. I know and understand this, and I don't hold it against you in any way. It's just the nature of aging. Okay, Becky. Now that you've pointed out my sexual shortcomings and done your best to minimize them, are you going to get to the point of our conversation? As she talked about my inability to fully satisfy her, I concluded that this train was heading towards asking permission to have an affair. I was almost right. Henry, please understand. I'm not trying to belittle you. I'm just trying to explain. It's very difficult for me to talk about this. I hope you won't be too angry and we can continue to talk about it like we did before. I didn't say anything or move. I was just waiting. Henry, I have a lover. This has been going on for almost a year now. I was shocked. I couldn't respond. She kept talking to fill the silence. We meet a couple of times a week. I don't love him. I love only you. I tried hard so you wouldn't find out. I made sure nothing changed at home. I know when you're in the mood and plan around it. You always had me when you wanted. Nothing will change. You're my husband and your needs come first. So you'll continue this? Yes, Henry. My needs have increased. I need this to meet them. But this won't change my feelings for you or our love life. Who is he? I'm not telling you, Henry. You don't need to know. It's not one of your friends or co-workers. Just someone I met. And you expect me to accept this because I love you? Yes, I know you love me and want me to be happy, and you didn't notice any changes. I tried hard to keep it that way. The alternative is alimony and child support. You'd live elsewhere. I love you and don't want you to suffer. It's better for everyone if we continue as before. I tried to stay calm, but inside I was furious. How dare she threaten me with divorce? Holly might not like living with a cheating mother. You've got it all figured out, haven't you? You played me, and now you leave me hanging. Please don't see it that way, honey. Don't call me that. Being angry won't help. That may be true, but it makes me feel better. This is hard to hear, but it won't affect us. You didn't notice and won't in the future. It's just something I do to satisfy my needs. It won't take anything from you. It's like if I did volunteer work. Okay, let's assume I believe you. Why now? What do you mean? All this time you managed to lie and deceive me. I never lied to you, Henry. When we got married, you promised to be with only me. Not telling me is lying every day since you first slept with him. He's not an asshole. He's very nice. I wouldn't date an asshole. He sleeps with married women. That makes him an asshole. He didn't seduce me. I went to him. So you're even more of a traitor than I thought. Henry, I ignored her. Let's get back to my question. Why tell me now? You made me trust you. You deceived me for a year. Why now? Like I said, I plan to spend every day showing you how much I love you. But he is taking me to Hawaii for a week, like our first date anniversary. Are you kidding me? You leave for a week with your lover and I stay home working? Then I welcome you back? What did I do to deserve this disrespect? You did nothing, Henry. This isn't disrespectful. I'm doing this for myself. It doesn't affect my feelings for you. I don't understand. What about your daughter, Becky? What will you tell Holly about this trip? We always went as a family, and now you're going alone. I told Holly my friends and I are taking a trip. It won't affect our family vacation this summer. She didn't mind. She even joked about it. You think I'll let her believe this? What proof do you have, Henry? I showed her brochures and promised to tell her about it when I return. All you have is your word. She'd rather believe me than you. You thought of everything. You can do what you want. Who cares what I think? If I don't like it, that's too bad. How do you expect to stay married to me after this? We love each other. When I return, everything will be normal. I'm tired of this. She hadn't thought about the long-term consequences. Even if we stay married, which we won't if she goes on this trip, things won't be the same. I made one last try. Becky, don't leave. Let's work on our marriage and make things better. Please don't leave. Henry, I'm going, but everything will be as before. You'll see. I love you too much to let this change anything. Well, I tried. This has already changed things. But you did your duty. You told me your plans. Have a good time. Unlike you, I prefer not to lie to my spouse. I'll be in the carpentry shop if you need me. Henry, be careful. Using power tools while you're upset is dangerous. I walked to the basement, ignoring her advice. I couldn't believe how foolish she was. I loved her, but I wasn't going to agree to her plans. I was shocked she even thought I might. I decided to tell Holly what her mother was up to. If Holly didn't believe me, I'd risk it and take a trip to Hawaii. We've talked about going to Hawaii for years, waiting for Holly to be old enough to enjoy it. But now, before we could go, she decided to leave with that guy. I thought about my options. She was right about the divorce. In our state, it's a no-fault divorce, so I'd have to pay child support for a few years. Since Holly would likely stay with her mother, I'd have to pay for everything. I didn't like the idea of supporting my wife and her boyfriend while I lived alone in some apartment. And who knows who she might bring home around Holly. I saw no other option but to stay here until Holly left for college, then move out. But I wouldn't be intimate with my wife again. I had been in the workshop for hours when I heard my daughter come home. Usually she spent Saturdays with her friends or Dean. I thought it might be a good time to tell Holly what her mother was doing when we were all in the room together. Maybe she would believe me, maybe not, but at least she could decide for herself. I was about to go upstairs when I heard Holly talking to her mother. The first thing Holly said shook me even more. "Hello, Mom. Have you told Dad about your trip to Hawaii with Mr. Harrington yet?" Damn, she knew everything. Becky hadn't told her the story about the trip with her friends. Holly knew the truth and didn't mind. "Who is Mr. Harrington? Does Holly know him?" "Yes, she knows him. He isn't happy and is sulking in the carpentry shop. He'll come around. He has no choice. I can't believe he's so selfish. If he truly loved you, he'd be happy for you to get your needs met. He'll just have to accept that you need a younger man. As long as he gets what he wants, he has no reason to complain." Who the hell was this kid? Becky had been filling Holly's head with nonsense for years. Holly was her mini-me. "I told him, but he took it personally. His fragile ego can't accept that he can't meet all my needs anymore. I told him people change with age, but he still sees me as his woman. No respect here. I'm glad I introduced you to Mr. Harrington. He's looking forward to the trip. He has special plans for you." Oh my God. My own daughter knew about it and helped her mother cheat on me. She seemed to enjoy my humiliation. How does my 18-year-old daughter know someone older than her mother who can afford a trip to Hawaii? I'll have to figure that out, but at least I have a name. "Honey, don't talk to him about our sex life. It makes me uncomfortable and it's inappropriate. You told me things weren't working out with Dad and that it was time to take a lover like Grandma did. You complained you didn't have the opportunity to meet someone. I found someone for you, so I deserve some freedom." "That's true, but you still shouldn't talk about it with Rick. You're still underage and he's your teacher." Jackpot. "Okay, Mom, I'll try. I'm happy for you." After that conversation, my plans changed completely. I wasn't going to stay in the same house with these two. Of course, it's harsh to call your own daughter names, but she knew right from wrong. But there wouldn't be a divorce either. I'd still be responsible for expenses until Holly graduates in June. But this way, I could keep costs down. In a divorce, I'd have to pay a percentage of my income, which would be more than I'd like. So I decided to move out. I'd live elsewhere, maybe share an address with my brother Michael, and keep a household account to pay bills and other expenses. I'd keep my email and phone active so my wife and her protege could contact me if they needed something, and I'd decide if I'd cover the costs. The days of Holly getting everything she wanted were over, especially the car she's been wanting. I was just about to buy her one since I handled our finances. I could arrange everything within 2 weeks. As long as Becky's credit cards worked, everything was fine. I'd also find a place to live, which shouldn't be too difficult. I wouldn't pretend everything was fine, but I wouldn't make a big deal out of it either. All I cared about was that I was now living with a neighbor and her daughter until I could make other arrangements. I didn't win or lose anything. Holly would eventually find out that I knew about her part in her mother's betrayal. I'm curious how she'll react. I walked upstairs to take a shower, planning to head out for dinner. I wasn't going to sit at the table with traitors after a long day. When I opened the kitchen door, both of them looked at me sharply. Maybe they were grinning or maybe not. It didn't matter. I knew what they thought about me. Holly ran up to me as usual. "Hello, Daddy." She tried to hug me, and I would have hugged her back normally. But this time, I just stood there until she finished. She pulled away, puzzled. "What's the matter, Dad?" I looked at both of them and walked silently to my bedroom. "She won't be mine for long. I'll move my things to one of the spare rooms until it's time to leave." For now, I closed the door and got into the shower. Of course, my wife couldn't ignore this. Those interior locks and their universal keys are useless. I hoped locking the door would show I wanted to be alone. But that was too much to hope for. Becky barged in and started scolding me. "What was that? If you want to be mad at me, fine, but don't take it out on your daughter. She did nothing to you." I stared at her for a moment before getting back into the shower. "So this is silent mode, right? How mature. Let me know when you're done sulking. By the way, dinner is ready." She slammed the door as she left. I shrugged and went about my business. I no longer cared what she thought or said. I put on trousers and a nice shirt and came out of the bedroom. I saw the girls sitting at the table eating what Becky had prepared. They went quiet when I entered, maybe not wanting me to hear their conversation or just watching to see what I'd do next. I looked at them, and Holly smiled, maybe hoping I'd join them and apologize. But I turned away and walked out the front door. I got into my BMW and drove away before anyone moved. I ate alone at a local steakhouse, taking my time and reading news articles online. It was just to pass the time. I noticed I didn't get any phone calls from the women in my life. I caught a late movie that ended at 12:30 a.m. and got home around 1 a.m. To my relief, everyone was asleep, and I quickly fell asleep in the guest room. Of course, my peace didn't last long. Some times are worse than others. I can't deny Becky's physical appeal. "Okay, you're awake. Why did you sleep here last night?" "Because I was avoiding you, Becky. I didn't want to sleep with you." "It seems part of you was interested." She reached for me, but I turned away and got out of bed. Becky's face showed disappointment. "Henry, it's still me. The woman you loved all these years and who loves you. Let me take care of you." "You're not the woman I've loved all these years. And that's not the heart you shared. As long as there's someone else in your life, I won't be part of this. It's that simple. It's your choice. Your husband or your boyfriend. I see you're not being reasonable. That's okay. I can wait. I know you love me and will eventually understand. You want me to be happy and will give me this little thing." She laughed and walked to the bedroom. Sunday passed much like Saturday. I spent most of the day in the workshop and then went back for dinner. I had work tomorrow, so I returned at a reasonable hour. Holly was already in bed and Becky tried again, but I refused her advances. The next 2 weeks went by quickly. I stayed late at work every evening. I've never been so busy before. Each night I asked Becky not to leave so I could later say I tried. The conversation was always the same. "Becky, please don't go on this trip. Call him and end it. Let's work on us." "Henry, I know this is hard for you, but I need to go. I'm determined. It's just 1 week, then we'll return to our relationship. So you'll keep seeing him. It won't be just us." "Yes, Henry, I'll keep seeing him. I'm sorry this hurts you, but it's what I need. If you love me, you'll understand." This went on until the night before her departure. As for Holly, she finally cuddled with me a few days after I overheard her and her mom. She sat on my lap while I tried to watch a basketball game on TV. "Dad, stop avoiding me. You're mad at me for some reason. You always said we need to talk to solve problems, but if you don't tell me what's wrong, we can't fix it. Please, Daddy, I love you, Holly." Sure, here's the simplified version of the text with straightforward language. "I can tell you why I'm mad at you, but I think there's someone else who can explain it better." Someone else. "What do you mean?" she asked. "Maybe you should ask your teacher, Mr. Harrington, what's bothering me. You seem very close to him, even setting him up with your mom so she could cheat on me. Maybe he can answer your questions." Holly looked surprised when I said I knew her role in the affair and the name of Becky's lover. But she didn't look sorry just like her mom. She looked at me like I was overreacting. "So you know I introduced them. How did you find out?" she asked. "I heard you talking to your mom that day. She told me about the Hawaii trip." "It's okay, Dad. It's just sex. She doesn't love him," she said. "Why does everyone say that? Like it makes it okay. Marriage isn't just about sex and love." "Well, she's leaving, and there's nothing you can do. Just do your best, and you'll keep getting what you deserve," Holly said as she left the room. I was shocked by her dismissive attitude and how she echoed her mother's nonsense. We avoided each other until her mom left. Finally, the big day came. Becky was packed and ready, waiting in the living room for the taxi. Holly was with her, excitedly talking about the trip. I was in the workshop when I heard the car pull up. Becky called out, "My taxi's here, goodbye." She waited, maybe expecting me to respond, but I didn't. "Aren't you going to kiss me goodbye?" she asked. "Nope," I replied. She left and I heard the front door close and the car drive away. It was the end of my marriage. I took the week off while Becky was away. I moved my things out of the house while Holly was at school. I moved things from the guest room back into the bedroom to make Holly think I was staying. I didn't mention the move or the word divorce, wanting Becky to think I'd still be there when she got back. She was due back Saturday night, by which time I'd be gone. A few days into the trip, I finished moving. Holly knew I knew about her role in the affair, so she didn't hide much. One evening my phone rang and it was Becky. I ignored it. Then Holly's phone rang. "Hello, Mom. How was your trip?" "Sounds great." "No, he's here, but since he knows, there's no point in hiding. He moved his things back to your bedroom as soon as you left. He was bluffing, just like you said. I think he's come to terms with it." "Okay, I'll tell him." "I love you, Mom." Holly came into the living room where I was. "Mom asked me to tell you she loves you and that everything will be the same when she gets back." I nodded, not saying anything. The rest of the week, I moved my things to my new apartment, only taking personal stuff since the new place had everything else. On Friday night, the day before Becky came back, I realized my relationship with Holly was broken. After dinner, I was in the living room watching TV. Holly sat next to me. "Are you ever going to talk to me about anything other than grumbling and short answers? You forgave Mom, but what about me?" she asked. "What makes you think I forgave your mom?" I replied. "You went back to the bedroom. It means you forgave her." "Holly, I haven't and will never forgive your mom for what she did. No matter where I sleep, she ruined what we had." "I don't understand why you're acting this way," Holly said. "No, she wants it. That's a big difference. You're barely 18, Holly. You don't fully understand." She stood up angry. "Just because I'm 18 doesn't mean I can't understand what Mom is going through. She explained everything to me." I got angry too and stood up, raising my voice. Yes, she explained everything from her selfish point of view. She decided she was the only one who mattered and didn't care what others thought. "This is nonsense, Dad," Holly said. "She was here for you and me every day of her adult life. When she finally did something for herself, everything went wrong for you. She couldn't have hurt me more if she had hit me." I guess the look on my face showed her she had crossed a line. "Oh, Dad, I'm so sorry." The rage and hatred I felt towards my daughter at that moment was something I had never felt before. As far as I understood, I no longer had a daughter. "Holly, don't ever talk to me again." I walked out of the living room and up the stairs to my bedroom one last time. Holly cried, realizing the damage she had done in that single moment of anger. "Dad, I didn't want this. Please, Dad, talk to me." I ignored her and walked into my room, closing and locking the door. I stayed up all night collecting the remaining things. I took a taxi from the airport instead of asking Rick for a ride. Holly told me Henry was back in the bedroom, so he had obviously gotten over himself, and I didn't want to risk seeing Rick and upsetting him. I finally had everything the way I wanted it and didn't want to rock the boat. When I entered the house, the taxi driver carried my things inside. It was almost dinner time, and I expected Henry or Holly to cook something, but there was nothing. Maybe Henry was planning a dinner to celebrate my return. I heard footsteps on the stairs, and then Holly appeared and rushed to hug me. She looked like she had been crying. "Hi, baby. I missed you too, but there's no point in crying over it." She buried her face in my shoulder, and I heard her sobbing and felt her body trembling. It was clearly more than just missing me. I pulled her face away from me. "Baby, what's the matter? Where is Dad?" She was trying really hard to get her emotions under control, so I waited. After a few minutes, she was able to talk. Dad moved out. I drove him away." "What are you talking about, Holly? You told me he returned to the bedroom." "Yes, but last night we had a fight and I said something terrible. This morning, he and all his things were gone. There was a note on the table. I looked at the table and saw a note I hadn't noticed until that moment, with a growing sense of horror. I walked up to the table and took it in my hands. It was printed from the computer, except for Henry's signature at the bottom. I assumed Holly had already read it. I sat down on one of the kitchen chairs and read Henry's note. "Becky, I hope your week in Hawaii, the place we planned to visit together with Rick Harrington, went exactly the way you wanted because it cost you your marriage and will most likely cost Rick his job. The school board does not accept your relationship. You'll soon find out, if you haven't already, that I've moved out. I only took my personal belongings. I hope to eventually pick up my tools and woodworking supplies, but right now, I have nowhere to put them, so I'll have to wait. If this turns out to be a problem, I can just replace them, so don't think you can hold them over my head. I wish I could understand why your sexual needs became more important to you than mine, but apparently that's what happened. I was willing to try to forgive you for a year-long affair if you called off the trip and vowed never to see him again. But our marriage was over when the taxi pulled out of our driveway. I also cannot understand why you involved our daughter in your affair to the point of setting you up with your lover. The contempt and disrespect she now shows me is a clear result of you telling her about things that should be private between husband and wife. Apparently, you put the same destructive ideas about fidelity and marriage into her head that you put into yours, which were probably planted in her by your own mother. I doubt that Holly will be able to have a normal relationship with a man thanks to your instructions. I only left you and your daughter. Yes, I mean our daughter. I didn't shirk my responsibilities. All your apartment bills will continue to be paid automatically as they always have been. Funds will be deposited into your household account to pay for other expenses. Don't expect to have a lot of money left over for entertainment. Your pleasures don't bother me anymore, but you obviously have assets you're willing to trade, so maybe you can come to an agreement. I left my email address and mobile phone. Don't expect me to answer when you call. This is primarily for emergencies. If there is anything you want or need, let me know by email, and I will decide if I am willing to fund the request and let you know. Please don't flood my email with requests to come home or excuses for your actions. I will delete them without reading them and cancel the mailbox if necessary. Michael knows where I live now, and he is under strict orders not to share this information with any of you. In addition, security has been instructed not to allow any of you into my office. If you try to catch me there, I'll tell you the same thing I told your daughter when she unleashed her hate speech on me on Friday night. I don't ever want to talk to you or any of you ever again. Your selfish, dismissive actions have damaged both relationships, and I will no longer be involved in your lives, at least as much as possible. I'm sure Holly will find someone to walk her down the aisle at her wedding when she finally convinces Dean or some other poor guy to marry her. I have loved you both for so long that it pains me to leave you, but your attitude towards me has reached the point of destruction, and I will not allow you to do this to me. Henry. Tears streamed down my face as I finished reading Henry's letter. Everything was not as it should have been. He had to love me forever and understand this wasn't about him or us. I knew involving Holly was a mistake, but it started with girl talk. She told me about her and Dean, and I talked about Henry and me to gain Holly's trust. I mentioned that Holly's grandma had an affair when Dad slowed down, and I was thinking about the same. Suddenly, Holly introduced me to Rick at her choir performance. He was handsome and charming, and I remember having a great time with Henry that evening. After meeting Rick, Holly talked about him more often. She said he wasn't married and didn't want to be. He wasn't looking for anything serious, just some fun. I took the bait and found reasons to contact him just to start a conversation. One day I invited him to dinner when Henry was out of town, citing loneliness. That night we ended up at his apartment. He didn't have the love Henry gave me. I spent the night there and we repeated it in the morning. When I returned home, Holly was there, and it was clear I had spent the night with Rick. We talked about it like old friends. It felt exciting, like being back in school. When Henry returned, he didn't know what I had done. I managed not to give myself away. I realized I could see Rick and keep it from Henry. Since Rick wasn't a full-time teacher, he had no problem meeting me a couple of times a week. We were very discreet. This went on for several months. I kept an eye out for any signs Rick was getting too attached. I couldn't let him fall in love with me, but nothing showed up, and our relationship continued. We met a couple of times a week, and then I got myself in order before Henry arrived. I thought something would go wrong, but it didn't. Until that fateful day. It was nearing the anniversary of the first time Rick took me to his apartment. Even though we didn't love each other, it was still kind of an anniversary. He asked me to go to Hawaii with him. Henry and I were planning to go there, but I didn't think about it at the time. The thought of a week in paradise was very tempting. Being a housewife, I couldn't justify such a long absence. I didn't have a job that took me out of town, and saying I was visiting relatives would be too easy for Henry to check on me. I decided Henry wouldn't mind. He loved me so much he would let me do this and everything would be fine. Rick suggested I could point out how bad divorce would be for Henry if he was inclined. I really love Henry, so I felt guilty doing this behind his back. This seemed like the perfect time to bring it out in the open. I thought Henry would approve because he loved me and wanted me to be happy and enjoy a week in Hawaii with Rick without feeling guilty. I was surprised when Henry was so against it. I knew his pride would suffer, but I thought if I explained there was no love between Rick and me, that it was just sex beyond what Henry needed, he would understand. I was sure Henry would eventually see things logically. That's why I told him 2 weeks in advance, to give him time to come to terms with it and give me his consent. This didn't happen. I was sure that when I returned and everything was the same for him, he would see that what I did with Rick didn't harm him, but that opportunity never came. Things didn't work out between Henry and Holly, and he left. I doubted that was the only reason. I underestimated what Henry's love for me could do. Now the love of my life is gone. But I'm resourceful, and have no doubt I can find him and convince him to see things my way. I might have to cool things off with Rick for a while and convince Henry it's over before I take him back. But I can do it. Henry's brother Michael knew his new address. They were friendly, so I doubted I could persuade him. But maybe his wife, Fiona, would help me. She probably knows or can find out Henry's new address. Once I find him, I can convince him to come back and give me another chance. This is probably why he doesn't want to talk to me. He knows he can't resist my charm. Plus, he never mentioned filing for divorce, so he clearly doesn't want to lose me. Most likely, he was just trying to make a point with his "I never want to talk to you again" thing. But I doubt he meant it. He will soon understand he can't live without me and will be glad to hear from me. Yes, I'll start on Monday. I'll call Fiona when Michael is at work. Until then, Holly and I will struggle. It was a beautiful day and I decided to relax by the pool. The apartment complex I moved into had a pool, a fitness center, and a large common area for parties and gatherings. I lived here for a couple of months. I spent the first week unpacking, then at work. For the next few weeks, I was just depressed and sat in the living room watching TV. Finally, I decided to either live or die. I went to the pool to relax and get some sun. The water was probably still a little cool for me, but lying in the sun and reading was just right. I went on a few dates, but no one caught my attention. I was still mourning the loss of my family and missing Becky. Not the one I left, but the one I married and loved for almost 20 years. I had been relaxing in one of the sun loungers for about an hour when a shadow fell over me. Opening my eyes, I saw a very attractive woman standing there. I couldn't see her clearly until my eyes adjusted. She spoke first. "Hello, I haven't seen you here before. Did you just move in?" "About 2 months ago. It seems like this is the first time I've been outside since then. My name is Henry." "Nice to meet you. May I join you?" "Sure," I said. She smiled and pushed another sun lounger next to mine. Now that the sun was out of my eyes, I could see her better. She had long brown hair and a beautiful figure. She wasn't wearing a wedding ring. She sat down and turned to me. "So, Henry, are you recently divorced? Or are you just trying to make people think you're divorced?" I looked at her, puzzled. "Why do you ask?" "Your finger has a tan line and a dent, where you wore a wedding ring until recently. Very observant. Interesting that you're looking at my ring finger. No more interesting than when you checked mine a couple of minutes ago. I thought I was more subtle. Well, I'm not actually divorced. I took off the ring and moved out while my wife is in Hawaii for a week with her lover." "Oh my, this must be an interesting story." "It's not that interesting when you're living it, but I can see how it looks from the outside." "Is there a chance you'll reconcile?" "No. I still care about her, but what she did ruined any chance of us staying together." "You can tell me about it when you invite me to dinner tonight." I hesitated for a moment. "Is there a place you'd like to go?" "Somewhere nice. And you will ask me to dance?" My daughter will be with my sister, so we can go out as long as we want. That sounds great. Michelle looked at me, lifted her sunglasses, and made direct eye contact. Let me be clear, Henry. I like you, and I can tell you like me, but I don't sleep with married men, divorced or not. If you want a chance with me, you need to change your marital status. Well, I think I just found the motivation I was looking for, but maybe we'll see how dinner goes first. We spent another hour relaxing by the pool, mostly in silence, saving our conversation for dinner. Later, as I got ready for my date with Michelle, I thought about this unexpected turn of events. I loved being married, but I wasn't sure I wanted to start a new relationship right away, especially given the state of my current one. There was no doubt my marriage was over, but there were still many unresolved emotions, especially concerning Holly. She had said many hurtful things, but I understood she was influenced by her mother's views. Holly believed that, at Becky's age, a woman should take a lover, because that's what her grandmother and mother did, and she expected the man to agree, as her grandfather did. I knew I would try to improve my relationship with my daughter, despite everything. But as for Becky, I was done. I wouldn't let her stop me from living my life, even if it meant paying her off. I wouldn't let a few dollars hold me back. I picked Michelle up at 6 p.m., and we went to a nice Brazilian steakhouse downtown. I had been there before, but Michelle hadn't. She wore an emerald green dress that went below her knees but showed a lot of skin on top. She looked stunning, and I told her so. Thank you, sir. You look good yourself. I took her hand and led her to my car, opening the door for her. We drove through the city talking about the places we passed. We held hands the whole way, and it felt very comfortable. We were seated at a romantic table in a private corner of the restaurant. It's amazing what a well-placed $50 bill can do. We settled in and were greeted by our server, a young woman named Kelsey. We ordered drinks and started talking. I have to ask, Michelle said, why did you need another waitress? Because if she keeps pestering you, I'll claw her eyes out, and I wouldn't want to do that. I looked into her eyes, saw a hint of mischief, and knew she was joking, but I made a mental note to tone it down. She took my hand. Henry, I like you, and I want to get to know you. I didn't mean to seriously threaten the poor girl. I know, but I'm flattered you feel protective. So, Henry, what do you do for a living? I'm a mechanical engineer. I work as a senior vice president at Alpha Logistics in the city. And you? I work as a loan officer at First National, though I could live just fine on the alimony and child support payments from my ex-husband. He cheated on me with his assistant and got her pregnant. I can't imagine anyone cheating on someone as beautiful as you. Thank you. Do you have a child? Yes, Joni is 8 years old, a third grader at Oakleaf Elementary. I think she might be smarter than me. Does your ex take an active part in her life? Not at all. My sister's husband has done a good job being a role model, but we haven't heard from Jay in about 3 years. Do you have children? Technically, I have an 18-year-old daughter named Holly, but she seems to share some of her mother's views on cheating, so we don't really talk much right now. Look, I'd like to hear about what happened with your wife, but only if you're comfortable talking about it. Actually, I don't mind, although I come off well in her story, at least from my wife's side. Don't worry, I'll find out for myself how good you are at everything. I've laid out the story as best I can, from that fateful, we need to talk moment to Holly's scream and the early morning departure. For what it's worth, Henry, I agree that she seems as much a victim of her mother as you are. She's clearly taking her mother's words to heart and seems to realize she's gone too far. I agree, but it really hurt that my daughter could talk to me like that and have such a low opinion of me, even if it was influenced by Becky. Keep the lines of communication open. Someday she'll reach out. I hope so. Maybe I'll show some initiative too, so are you ready to share your story, Michelle? My story isn't as exciting. My ex, Jay, is the vice president of the Muscles gym chain. He travels a lot, inspecting various gyms around the country. A few years ago, he got a new personal assistant. Long story short, they started sleeping together on business trips. His bosses knew, and I got emails warning him to be careful. When she got pregnant, I left him. I got generous alimony and child support, plus a nice settlement from Muscles. I don't have to work, but I like having a reason to get up every day. Well, I don't know. That sounds pretty juicy to me. Maybe not as juicy as an adulterous trip to Hawaii, but still good. You seem to be handling your breakup well, Henry. At the moment, yes, but at home in my small apartment, loneliness sometimes gets to me. It was the right decision, but that doesn't mean I don't miss what we had before. If you feel bad, you can call me and I'll come over. As a friend, so you're not alone. We can talk, watch a movie, whatever. People helped me when I needed it, and I'll help you. Okay? I appreciate it, Michelle. Maybe I'll take you up on that. She took my hand and smiled. At that moment, I felt I had to do something. So I stood up and moved to her side of the small table, intending to kiss her cheek. She seemed ready to accept the kiss. I'm looking forward to more kisses, including longer ones, when you give me a ride home today. I kissed her again and returned to my seat. The dinner was excellent, and we got to know each other better. We went to a local dance club for older people. Michelle is 35, in case you were wondering. Maybe I was biased, but she seemed the most attractive woman in the room. The guys who asked her to dance seemed to think so too, but she turned them all down. We danced several times, staying close and moving well together. It was almost 2 a.m. when we finally stopped at her apartment door. I had a wonderful time, Henry. Me too, Michelle. Can we see each other tomorrow? Don't you think it's too soon? I thought there was some unspoken waiting period, but I just said what I felt. No, I don't think so. If I could do it sooner than tomorrow, I would. Good, because I was thinking the same thing. I have to pick up Johnny at 11, so it should be before then. I won't introduce her to a guy until we've been together for at least a month. How many guys has she met already? You will be the first. How about coming to my place for breakfast? I make a great omelet. I'll be there at 8:30. The knock came at 8:30, and I appreciated the promptness. I opened the door. Michelle was dressed in black yoga pants and a white long-sleeve top and looked as fresh as if she'd slept for 12 hours. I brought sliced fruit for your omelet. She held the bowl in one hand and with the other pulled me close and kissed me. She walked into the kitchen like she owned it, looking over the ingredients. I had bacon, spinach, and cheese for mine. Please? She started placing the fruit on plates while I prepared the omelet. For some reason, she looked in all the cabinets and drawers, and I was about to ask why when she told me. Our kitchens are arranged almost the same. I don't know why, but it interests me. I laughed and finished serving the omelet. Yesterday, I immediately felt at ease with Michelle, and today, I felt the same. It felt like we had known each other for years. We finished eating, then sat on the sofa, hugged, and chatted. Soon it was time for her to leave to pick up Johnny from her sister's house. I walked her to the car and kissed her again. "Call me later," she said as she got into the car. I watched as she drove out of the gate, turned right onto the road, and disappeared from sight. On Monday morning, the first thing I did was make an appointment with a divorce lawyer. I asked my friend at Alpha who he contacted when he got divorced a few years ago. My lawyer wasn't bad, Henry, but I would advise you to take the girl. My ex used her. She makes sharks look like guppies if you catch my drift. Sure, here's the simplified version of the text. He told me his wife's lawyer's name, and I found her number online. Since Becky didn't want a divorce, I thought she wouldn't start one. I was only in a hurry because I wanted to be with Michelle, and Michelle wanted it too. I wasn't sure if the divorce needed to be final or just started for her to be happy. I made an appointment for Wednesday afternoon, but Miss Duncan was very busy. It was just an initial meeting, and I had to make my case quickly. She would then decide if she would take my case or give it to one of her assistants. The girl on the phone warned me that Miss Duncan rarely took men as clients. That evening and the next, Michelle and I talked on the phone. I told her about my visit to the lawyer, and she promised it would be worth it. I wanted her to stay involved. On Wednesday morning, I was looking forward to the lawyer meeting when Michael called. This was normal, as we still talked often. "What's up, bro?" he asked. "Just updating you on home stuff. Becky is really trying to get your address. She keeps trying to get Fiona to tell her, but Fiona won't. Becky is getting more anxious and desperate. We can handle it, but just letting you know." "Thanks, Mike. I appreciate you and Fiona helping out. Let me know if I can do anything for you." "No problem. Maybe we can work something out later. Has Becky tried anything at your office?" "She came a couple of times at first, but didn't get anywhere. She still calls almost every day, but our secretary finds it amusing now." The meeting with the lawyer went well. Denise Duncan went into law to help women in divorce cases, but she realized some women caused these divorces, so she started helping some men too. She said she would never take a client who was an adulterer. Thanks to the investigators' evidence from the island trip, I had enough proof, and she took my case. She said women like Becky made other women look bad, and it was no wonder men treated them poorly. She suggested we use the private investigator's report to influence the divorce. I was tempted, but Becky had given me 20 good years, so I was willing to split everything and even pay alimony and child support, which Denise said was very fair. If Becky fought for the divorce, we could go public with the affair. The school board was already involved, and Rick might lose his job. Becky liked to volunteer, but my photos might have stopped family groups from working with her. This would only happen if she pushed for the divorce. That evening, I was thinking about what to eat and decided to go out when there was a knock on the door. Michelle came in with a picnic basket and some plates. I took them and kissed her. "Wow, that was a nice greeting. I missed you too. Where's Johnny?" she asked. One of her friends invited her for pizza. I guessed you hadn't eaten and wanted to know how the lawyer visit went. Do you want it to start as much as I do? Yes, we need to communicate better, and that marriage certificate is in the way. But let's eat first. She pulled out brisket, potato salad, and BBQ sauce. We talked and ate. I told her about my visit to the lawyer. You're kinder than I was. Jay and I were only married for 9 years. Do you think I should be tougher? It depends on you, but I like that you're fair. I know if we argue, you'll be reasonable. Jay wasn't like that. She stayed for about 2 hours before getting a call that they were coming back from the pizzeria. I walked her halfway to her apartment and watched her go inside. She was careful that Johnny didn't see me, so she didn't let me walk her all the way. I went back to my apartment feeling more upset. I couldn't believe Fiona wouldn't help me. Women were supposed to support each other, but she wouldn't find Henry's new address. I'd tried to follow him home several times, but he never went straight home, or I lost him in traffic. Before, I met with Rick twice a week, and after Henry left, 3 or 4 times a week. I needed someone, and Henry wasn't there, so I turned to Rick more often. But lately, I could only get Rick to meet me once. He said he was under pressure from the school board's investigation, and he didn't want to give them a reason to fire him. The union was fighting for him, but it didn't look good. None of us thought about the consequences. I started to think the Hawaii trip, as amazing as it was a big mistake. Henry barely gave me enough money to feed Holly and me. We have to eat dinner at home every night, and we can only watch movies on premium channels because we don't have money for the theater. Even then, we ordered too many movies, and Henry threatened to cut off the cable if we didn't cut back. He is being completely unreasonable. Holly is here now, and at least she has Dean to take her out sometimes, but I don't have any money to give her, so Dean has to pay every time. Now, Dean is pressuring Holly to have sex to contribute to the relationship. Holly is mad at me for this. All because Henry's ego can't handle the idea of another younger man taking care of my needs that he can no longer handle. I still love him, but when he finally comes back, he will have to meet all my needs or accept that I have someone else. On a bright Friday morning at 9:45, my phone rang. Becky had probably received the divorce papers around 9:30. I didn't answer because I was at work, but I was curious and listened to the message. It's all out of control, Henry. I destroyed these papers. I won't sign them. We're not getting a divorce. You need to understand that we need to meet and talk to move on together. Call me now. I wasn't surprised by her aggressive attitude. I knew she would fight the divorce because she thinks she is right. I thought maybe she would show some humility, but no. She still thinks I should accept what she does as part of life, and that it's my failure, not hers. I haven't mentioned the private investigator's report yet, but it looks like it will end this war. He found it easy to get evidence. They were careful here, but in Hawaii, they acted openly. Michelle and I were planning to go out tonight, and I was looking forward to it. We met a week ago, and tonight I was meeting her sister, Lori, and her husband, Jeff. The kids were staying with a friend, and this was my chance to be tested as my first line of defense. I was nervous, but optimistic. Leaving Johnny with the nanny, Michelle returned to get ready. When it was time to leave, I knocked on her door and was speechless. She wore a stunning knee-length purple dress with an open back and black shoes with high heels. We met Jeff and Lori at the restaurant and made introductions. We sat at a square table with Michelle on my right and Lori on my left. I thought it would be more convenient for people to spy on me during the evening. Michelle said, "You are in the process of a divorce. How is it going?" I looked at Michelle and saw that I was expected to handle this alone. No big deal, I thought. She deserves it. My wife received the papers today, but she intends to fight me. I can't be forced to stay married to her, but she will fight this as best she can. But you have evidence of her betrayal, Lori said. Yes, although it doesn't mean much in the divorce itself. We can use it to put pressure on her. Her mother is also a cheater, so there won't be much influence there. But the group she volunteers with might have something to say. In the end, it could go through without her signature if I wait long enough. And you expect Michelle to wait for this? Lori asked. I'm not sure if Michelle reacted because I was focused on Lori. I don't expect Michelle to do anything she doesn't want to do. If she decides not to wait, I'll be disappointed, but I'll respect her choice. I hope she wants to wait for me. I didn't plan on worrying about divorce, but I'm doing it so I can be with her. I think she's worth the wait. Lori just stared at me as my words ran through her head. Jeff grinned, impressed that I didn't wilt under pressure. Okay, for now, I approve of you, but you better stand up for yourself on the dance floor. I'll take you into circulation. Looking forward to it. The evening went wonderfully. Michelle and I stayed close the entire evening, except when we switched dance partners. Jeff and Michelle had danced before, but he was her brother-in-law, so why not? Lori was taller and slimmer with long, straight blonde hair. Michelle was bustier and rounder in the hips. It was hard to believe they were sisters. While dancing, Lori said, Michelle told me what your wife did. I'm really sorry. I appreciate it. It took a huge toll on my self-esteem, but Michelle made up for it beautifully. She really likes you. I haven't seen her like this since she met Jay. Please don't hurt her. I won't. She means a lot to me, and I really like her too. When we returned to the apartment complex, Michelle had to get in the car and pick up the children. Lori and Jeff had 2 children, Alexis, 10, and Marcus, 7. They were with a nanny and would stay there for the night so Jeff and Lori could have some alone time. I kissed her goodnight as she got into the car and walked back to my apartment alone. I had just gotten into bed when there was a knock on the door. I saw Michelle through the peephole and opened it. She kissed me and said, "Call me tomorrow." Then she left, and I went to the bedroom to calm down. I couldn't afford a lawyer, but the paperwork said Henry would cover the costs since he was filing for divorce. I found a lawyer who agreed to take the case, knowing payment would come later. She told me some things I didn't know. First, whether I signed the papers or not, the divorce would still happen. In that case, a judge would decide the terms, but they would likely be similar to what Henry proposed. Henry offered me the house for Holly's senior year and a year after, plus reasonable child support for 3 years. After that, the house would be sold, or I could buy it. But he wasn't interested in it. I couldn't believe this was happening. Why did I risk my marriage over something that didn't affect Henry in the long run? I tried to set up a meeting with Rick, but he turned me down. He said it was only fun because I was married, and now it wasn't exciting anymore since Henry was gone. Henry was right. Rick was an asshole. Holly was a mess. She missed her dad a lot. She and I were always close, but they did many things together, and she missed him in her life. Nothing was as it should be. 2 weeks passed since I met Michelle's sister, Lori. Besides the ticking clock, not much happened with the divorce. Becky still refused to sign the papers and wanted counseling, but it was a waste of time. Michelle and I met whenever possible, sometimes just for a few minutes after she put Johnny to sleep. Thanks to Lori, we met a couple of times a week. She said all she wanted in return was for us to reciprocate our feelings someday. I told her it was a done deal. It was Saturday, and Lori was babysitting Johnny again. I took Michelle to dinner and a concert at a club downtown. Looking back, I realized this had to happen eventually. We were eating quietly, holding hands, when I heard a scream from across the restaurant. "Get your hands off my husband right now!" It was Becky, shouting from the other side of the room. Turning towards the voice, I saw her walking toward us, with several of her friends looking embarrassed. Becky reached the table. "I caught you, you bastard! You're still married to me, you know. Now I have you." "Yes, Becky. You caught me having dinner with my neighbor. Congratulations. Don't try to tell me it's only dinner. I'm sure there's more happening later. Just look at her. She's probably giving herself away for nothing." Michelle stayed calm. "Actually, I respect wedding vows, even if they aren't mine. We haven't done anything yet, but I look forward to the day we can. Thanks for leaving him, Becky." Michelle's tone carried a hint of disgust and pity, making Becky even angrier. The staff had to remove her, and she was kicked out of the restaurant. As she was being dragged away, Becky managed to say, "Stay away from him, bitch." I wondered if her friend stayed with her for the rest of the evening. "So this is your wife?" Michelle asked. "I'm so sorry, honey, it's not worth it. This will be a great story to tell Lori and Jeff." She didn't bother me, but she was definitely angry. The rest of the evening was less dramatic, and we had a great time. We chose not to dance, just to sit and listen to the band. She spent a lot of time sitting on my lap, her scent intoxicating. At first, it was her perfume, but as it wore off, it became more natural. We held hands tightly on the way home. When we arrived at the apartment complex, I made a decision. I walked her to the door. "Michelle, I need to tell you something." She looked into my eyes, her hands clasped behind my neck. "What is it, baby?" "I never thought this would happen so soon, but I'm completely in love with you. You are my last thought at night and first in the morning. We have things to deal with, but I want you to know how I feel." She kissed me. "I love you too, Henry. You're wonderful, and I can't believe you're mine. We have a lot to overcome, but nothing will stop us from being together. If things were different, we'd be heading to my bed right now. When that time comes, we'll know it was worth the wait." We hugged and kissed on her doorstep. We knew if we went inside, we wouldn't be able to resist, so we went our separate ways. After kissing her again, I let her go. My lawyer called this morning. Henry upped the ante. His lawyer sent copies of photos of Rick and me in Hawaii. Apparently, Henry hired a detective, and the evidence was damning. They couldn't be used in the divorce, but could make my life difficult. Assuming the divorce was final, these photos could make it hard for me to get a job. Maybe attacking them in a restaurant wasn't the best idea. I miscalculated and thought my husband's kindness was weakness. I believed he would agree to share me. As wonderful as Rick was, he wasn't worth my marriage. I didn't expect things to end like this. A little over a month has passed since my trip, and things keep going wrong. Dean broke up with Holly today. They went on a date, and I gave her some money when he arrived. Her face lit up. She really likes him, and I think they'll get married someday. I know she's only 18, but they seem great together. But she burst into tears when he dropped her off. She ran to her bedroom and slammed the door. I got up to see what was wrong and lay with her for about 15 minutes until she calmed down. "Dean left me, Mom. Are you serious? Everything was going so well. What happened? What did he say?" "Well, he kept insisting we have sex, but I said no. Then he said he expected more from me because of you. I'm just like you in every other way." This made me mad. She continued, "I told him what you told me, that it's normal for a woman to need a lover because men's abilities decrease and women's needs increase as they get older. Then he asked if he could expect the same from me if we got married. I didn't know what to say, and he broke up with me because he thought I'd cheat on him." I realized that school disciplinary hearings for misconduct are public. Someone must have gotten the transcript of Rick's hearing, and my name was probably mentioned there. Crap. Look, I'm not stupid. I know society frowns upon a woman having a lover, but I didn't expect to get caught. I thought Henry would allow it, even if he wasn't happy about it. I didn't think he'd say anything because it would show he couldn't satisfy me anymore. Everything went wrong. I did what my mother suggested. She said my dad was angry for a while too, but decided it would be too embarrassing to make it public. She was with Uncle Leo for several years until he met that woman. I don't remember her name. Things changed between her and my father, but she said it was worth it. I kept trying to persuade Henry to talk to me and come back. Rick was gone, and I could promise never to see him again, telling Henry I only wanted him. Once Henry felt comfortable again, I could find a replacement for Rick. But this time, I wouldn't say anything about it. Tomorrow, I'll try to follow Henry home from work. I spoke with Denise Duncan today. Becky still refuses to sign the divorce papers, saying she wants another chance to talk and work things out. Denise said I should meet her face to face and convince her I wouldn't put up with her. Otherwise, this would drag on for months with appeals and delays. The best I could offer was to think about it because I had other things on my mind. What else was on my mind? Well, it's been 5 weeks since I met Michelle, and I've fallen in love with her. A month has passed, and tonight I'll finally meet Michelle's daughter, Joni. Michelle told me today's meeting isn't likely to be decisive, but I'm worried because I know Joni comes first, and I need her to like me. We started with a trip to Chuck E. Cheese for dinner to introduce ourselves on neutral ground. I was driving, and Michelle, as usual, was holding my hand in the front, but from the back seat, It seemed like Joni's eyes were on me. Although every time I saw her in the rearview mirror, she was smiling and enjoying the ride. We entered the restaurant, ordered food, and bought game tokens before we could grab a table. Joni grabbed my hand and pulled me into the play area. Are 8-year-old girls really that strong? Without further ado, I was led into a maze and a game of tag, which I lost badly. At some point, I lost sight of her and found her sitting in a chair for one of the games. "Where are you? You're so fast." She looked at me with big brown eyes. "Will you be my new dad?" I knelt down in front of her and took her small hands in mine. I remembered doing this many times when Holly was little and had a big question. I thought of better times. "I'd like to be, if you don't mind, but you don't have to decide right now." "I think I'd like you to be my new dad. My friends' dads don't play with them, but you did. And Mom says you make her happy, so I don't mind." I felt tears in my eyes, realizing it was a mix of what I had found and what I had lost. I asked her for a hug, and she hugged me tightly. I was very impressed with Michelle's girl. Michelle, of course, was watching us closely. We returned to the table to eat. I was seated on the other side of Michelle and Joni, but that was okay. I looked at them. They were so similar. Joni was Michelle's mini-me, just like Holly was Becky's mini-me. The rest of the evening was wonderful. We spent hours playing slot machines, using lots of tokens and earning tickets. We got enough to buy a fancy Barbie doll at the prize counter. Then we went to an ice cream parlor before heading back to the apartment. It was late, and Johnny was tired, so we put her to bed, and I read her a story. After putting her to bed, Michelle and I sat on the couch together. She snuggled close to me. "Are you ready to be a dad to a little girl again?" she asked. "You know, at my age, I had doubts. But now that I've met her, I can't imagine anything else." "What about one of our children?" she asked, looking up at me. "Nothing would make me happier than having a child with you, Michelle. And being a dad to Johnny would be just as special." A wide smile spread across her face. She said she remembered her words but couldn't wait for my divorce any longer. We spent the evening together, and I turned off my phone, only to find a missed call and voicemail from Denise. I listened to the message, and my day got even better, which I didn't think was possible. "Henry, this is Denise. Becky's lawyer just called and said she decided to sign the papers. She'll come to my office next week. You don't need to be here, but I'll let you know when everything is ready." That night, I slept very well. My marriage was finally ending. This morning, I was going to fight it to the end. But as I watched Holly cry in her room because Dean left her, I realized it was causing her too much pain. Where would this lead me? In the end, I'd still get divorced. But in doing so, I could ruin my daughter. So, I made the tough decision to sign the papers. As a mature 41-year-old woman, I coped with the pain in the best way I knew how. I went to a club, got drunk, and went home with the first person who asked. I woke up in someone else's apartment. I sent Holly to her friend Leslie's for the night and was grateful it didn't cost Holly her best friend. The guy was still sleeping, so I got dressed and quietly left the house. My car was still parked outside the club, so I called a taxi to pick it up. I went home, took a shower, and then went to bed. I spent the weekend with Michelle and Johnny. We went to the zoo on Saturday and had dinner at Lori and Jeff's on Sunday. Johnny spent most of the day with Alexis and Marcus, but they grew up together, so it wasn't surprising. Jeff was a nice guy and knew his way around a grill. He was taller than me. I'm 187 centimeters and in pretty good shape. He played baseball in college and just turned 40 while Lori was 38. While the sisters socialized and looked after the kids, I spent time at the grill getting to know Jeff. He and Lori had been married for 15 years, and he was completely in love with her. She is still the reason I get up in the morning and do what I have to do. I want her to be proud of me and happy she married me. I'm sure you're doing everything right, Jeff. I haven't spent much time with her, but she has that confidence from knowing she's achieved her goal. I've known Michelle for a long time. She's crazy about you, Henry. You got a good woman. She was completely devoted to Jay, and that's why what he did hurt her so much. You know, she gave everything to him. I know what your wife did, and I'll bet my life Michelle would never even take a step in that direction, let alone go all the way. I appreciate that thought, Jeff. Let me assure you I don't think Michelle would do anything like that. Otherwise, I couldn't give myself to her as completely as I do now. I was in a good mood about how both parts of my life were developing. With any luck, I could get Becky's signature on the paperwork and submit it this week. Then I would just have to wait 90 days until I could bring Michelle to the altar, which I planned to do as soon as possible. My head was spinning. I think it's Wednesday, but honestly, I've lost count. I've been getting drunk and going home with different men every night since last Friday, when I finally decided to sign the divorce papers. Luckily, the last few guys were better than the first, so at least I drowned my sorrows. But today, if it is Wednesday, I have to sign the papers. I don't know what I'll do without Henry. I love him so much. I just needed something more for a while. I didn't have feelings for Rick. I was supposed to spend my life with Henry, growing old together, spoiling our grandchildren, traveling the world. It was all in the plans. Now I'll only have loneliness and heartache from my foolishness. And God forbid if Henry ends up with that beautiful brunette I saw him with in the restaurant. She was absolutely gorgeous and younger than me. How much more painful would it be if I ruined my life and gave the only man I loved to a woman like that? I don't think I could live with it. I went to my lawyer's office, and we went to see Henry's lawyer together. I hoped he would be there, but he wasn't. When we got down to business, I was sad to see he had already signed the papers weeks ago. He couldn't wait to get rid of me. Now I can hardly blame him. Maybe someday I'll get the chance to apologize in person. But for now, I just let my lawyer check the papers and sign them. When she confirmed everything was fine, I signed. Sure, here's the simplified version of the text. I had dinner alone that evening. Holly was spending more time away from home, probably to avoid me. Later, I went to the club and found a table with 3 young guys. I told them I had a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for them if they paid for a hotel room. We left the bar quickly. I was completely sober. This was my way of making up for what I had done. The divorce papers were signed, and after a 90-day waiting period, 30 days had already passed. My love for Michelle and Johnny grew, and we became so close that she called me Daddy, which warmed my heart. Lori and Michelle were planning their wedding, wanting lots of flowers and a good reception. I proposed the day after Becky signed the papers because I couldn't wait to put a ring on Michelle's finger. I struggled with Holly's role in all this. Becky did what she thought was necessary, and I understood her selfish reasons. But Holly didn't get any direct benefit except maybe a happier mom. It hurt that she seemed to enjoy seeing me humiliated. As a woman, she might understand her mother's needs and felt happy for Becky, despite my objections. Becky presented taking a lover as inevitable, and Holly might have seen it as normal. I felt Holly was another victim of Becky's selfishness, but her joy hurt me and drove us further apart. One thing I liked about Michelle having a daughter was the chance to start over and do it right. When Holly was little, I worked a lot and left most of her upbringing to Becky. Holly and I had our moments together, playing soccer and volleyball, but we didn't talk much about life lessons or values for marriage and relationships. I tried to teach strength and perseverance, but left other values to Becky, which backfired. I wondered if anything could be fixed. My marriage would be officially over soon, and I'd been marking the date on my calendar. With Henry gone, I felt like I had nothing to live for. Holly, now 18, spent most of her time away from home. Just a few months ago, I had everything: a husband who adored me, a wonderful daughter, and lovers. My own arrogance caused it all to collapse. I had no idea how I'd cope when it was all over. As long as Henry and I were legally married, there was still a chance. But once the divorce was final, it would all be over. I hadn't spoken to him since the day I flew to Hawaii, except for my outburst at the restaurant. No one would tell me what he was doing now. Was he still with the woman he was with that night? Were they serious? Or was he just trying to forget me? Was his work okay? I hated the idea that I might have hurt his career. It was all supposed to be harmless, but my arrogance ruined everything. Henry didn't suspect anything, and Holly supported me. No harm done, or so I thought. But I was stupid to talk openly about it, and now I sit here with a glass of wine. I haven't found a guy yet, but he's out there somewhere. I've never gone home alone when I wanted company. Sometimes it even gives me strength, rather than just trying to drown my grief and feelings. The divorce would be finalized in a few days, and my wedding to Michelle was scheduled in 3 weeks. This gave me time to get a marriage license. Michelle and Lori went shopping with the kids this morning while I cleaned out my apartment. Michelle's lease expired last month, so she switched to month, even though I still had a few months left. We bought a house nearby so Joni wouldn't have to leave her school, which was great. We would close on the apartment next week. Michelle and I spent every night together at her place if we had Joni, and at my place if we didn't. But Michelle insisted we wait until we were married before officially moving in together, so she kept her apartment and I kept mine. And as financial constraints were not a concern, I agreed to it. I had received a notification that they were on their way back and wanted to ensure that I was present at home. It appeared peculiar, but I verified my presence at home and eagerly anticipated their return. The response I received was a smiley face. Michelle had her own key, and I typically left the door unlocked, especially when I was expecting her. Therefore, when she knocked on the door upon her return, I was taken aback. Perhaps she was engaging in some sort of game. I pondered. Consequently, I decided to participate in the game and opened the door. I could not have been more surprised if God himself had been standing on the other side of the door. "Hello, Daddy." I simply gazed at my daughter in utter disbelief. We both gazed at each other through the opening created by the door frame until Holly began to squirm due to the awkwardness of the situation. I nodded my head to snap out of the trance I had fallen into at the sight of Holly standing in front of me. I stepped back and allowed her to enter. She walked past me into the living room, glancing at the empty passage. I closed the door and turned to look at my daughter for the first time in almost 3 months. I noticed that she was trying to hold back her tears. "What are you doing here, Holly? I thought I made it clear that I didn't want to hear from you anymore after what you said," I said sternly. "I made a mistake, Dad. I need to talk to you. And if after that you don't want to see me again, I won't bother you anymore," she pleaded. "Fine, Holly, I'll listen. But first, I need to know how you found out where I live," I replied. "It was your girlfriend, Michelle. She called me and said that you guys were getting married, and that it was time for you and me to talk about what happened," Holly explained. "Is it true? I hope you're not angry with her." "She also said that I would have a younger sister," Holly added. This was no longer the same snotty, dismissive child I'd spoken to last time. I was intrigued enough by this change to continue the conversation, inviting her to get comfortable on the sofa. I offered her something to drink and poured each of them a glass of iced tea. "Okay, girl, what do you want to say, Dad?" I deeply regret the way things unfolded and the words I spoke, especially the last one. I believed that Mom deserved better and that you were selfish for causing her pain. What caused you to change your perspective? Several factors influenced me. The first was when Dean ended our relationship. You two seemed happy together. When did this happen? It occurred a few weeks after you departed. Despite this, I still held on to my negative opinion of you. Mr. Harrington was dismissed from his job. The reason behind it was discovered, and soon the entire school was aware. Since my mother couldn't provide me with financial support, he started covering all my expenses. He also began pressuring me to engage in sexual activities. This situation triggered my parental instincts. I need to speak with Dean's parents about this. I was acquainted with them long before Holly and Dean began dating, and I know they wouldn't approve. "And you?" She gazed at me with the innocence I remembered from before all of this happened. "No, Dad. I don't know if you noticed, but I felt a sense of relief inside. What else transpired?" "Well, I continued to defend Mom's actions. He questioned whether that meant I would be unfaithful to him in the future. I was at a loss for words, and he assumed my silence meant yes, leading to our breakup. Would you change anything? Would I cheat on him? Despite Mom's efforts to justify her behavior, that's not the right path to take. No, Dad, I wouldn't. I realized the repetition of the word Dad. That day has been on my mind a lot. Even then, I might have said that it depends on the circumstances. Perhaps things wouldn't be as they are now between you and Mom, and I wouldn't feel the need to do so. I'm uncertain. However, I can now confidently say that the answer is no. This is good. Is there anything else? Yes, Daddy. I spend a lot of time with Leslie's parents, just talking to them and stuff. I've lost a lot of friends because of this, but Leslie's family is still close to me. I told them that my mother said a woman takes care of her family all her life and can't do anything for herself. They surprised me by saying that she acted like a bad wife and mother. I won't argue with that. They talked to me about wedding vows and promises, but they also shared what they went through when Leslie was little. Mr. P got very sick. He told Mrs. P he understood if she needed to find someone else for sex, and he wouldn't be upset. She almost hit him when he said that. She asked what kind of wife she would be to be so selfish when he was sick. It wasn't that he didn't want to, he just couldn't. And that's what those vows are about. You stay faithful and support each other through good times and bad. She never even thought about doing that to him. They made it clear that Mom was only thinking about herself when she did what she did. Just because you were cared for didn't mean she could be with someone else. You know, Holly, many years ago, even before you were born and when you were little, I had a much higher sex drive than your mother. But I didn't push her. We did it when she was ready. By her logic, I could find another woman when she wasn't ready. Do you think she'd be okay with that? She thought about it and said, "No way, Daddy. She'd probably leave you and I'd understand. I'm so sorry I believed Mom without thinking." If I had thought about it, I would have known this was wrong. I was just caught up in the excitement she felt and the fact that we had a secret. I was wrong. Tears started to run down her cheeks. I handed her a napkin, pulled her close, and hugged her tightly. "I forgive you, baby." "Really?" she asked. "I forgive you. I needed you to realize this was wrong on your own." "If I had tried to tell you myself, it would have turned your mom against me. You had to figure out what was right and wrong by yourself. I'm glad you finally did." "Does this mean you'll come back into my life, Dad?" "Of course, honey. In fact, I have a wedding soon and I really need you." "I know Michelle already asked me to be a bridesmaid. Leslie will be there too. I can't wait." I thought about how clever Michelle was, and another reason I loved her. She knew exactly what to do and wouldn't stop me from doing the right thing. But I noticed Haley seemed to have something else on her mind. "What's the matter, honey? Do you want to say something else?" "It's difficult, Dad. I don't want to be selfish, but just say it, Holly. We'll figure it out. Dad, can I live with you and Michelle?" My first thought was that she was tired of having so little money because I only gave Becky enough to buy groceries. "After the divorce, Mom will have more money. I'll pay more in alimony and child support." "That's not it, Dad. It's just..." Holly seemed very worried. I realized she wanted to get away from her mom. "Holly, what happened? Why do you want to leave your mom and live with me?" "Dad, she's not herself. She always seems drunk or almost there. Half the time she doesn't come home until the next morning. And when she does, some strange guy drops her off, and Mrs. Malone has to take her to get the car." "Does she bring men into the house?" I was angry at the thought, not because I cared what Becky did, but because Holly might be in danger. No matter how mad I was at Becky, I didn't want her to get hurt. "I don't know. I've never seen them, but maybe when I'm not around. I often stay at Leslie's." "Good baby. Of course you can stay with us, but something needs to be done. We can't let your mom do this to you." I messaged Michelle and asked her to come over right away. Holly and I were sitting on the sofa when Johnny came in. Holly laid her head on my shoulder. "So I guess the wedding is still on. You're not mad at me for inviting Holly?" "You won't get away from marrying me that easily." She sat down on the other side of Holly, and Johnny climbed onto my lap. "Honey, we have a problem." I told her what Holly said about Becky and her choices. Becky was clearly in a self-destructive phase, and we had to help her. She was still Holly's mom, and gave me many good memories. Michelle, as always, was supportive. "Do what you have to do, baby. It's important. Do you want me to go with you?" "I think it will only make things worse. I'll leave Holly here. This is something I need to take care of." I drove to my old house for the first time since that day. The grass was a little dry, but everything else was fine. Becky's car was in the driveway. No other cars were there, so I hoped this was a good sign. I rang the bell. The house looked the same, but the woman who answered the door was not the same as the one I left. Her hair was a mess and looked dirty. She had lost weight and was wearing an old robe. "Henry, oh my God, honey, you're back. Please tell me you're taking me back. I'll do anything." "No, Becky, but I want to help you. Holly told me what's going on here. You can't keep doing this." She looked at me, trying to understand what I said. Then it was like a switch flipped. "Have you talked to Holly? Have you forgiven her and let her back into your life? What about me? Where is my forgiveness?" "I forgive you, Becky, but..." "Then why won't you take me back? I love you, Henry. I need you. Please, Henry, please." "Becky," I hated yelling, but I needed her to calm down. "Becky, I'm not here to take you back, but I'm here to help you." I took Becky to the emergency room. Her blood alcohol level was very high. They called a psychiatrist and had her admitted for 72 hours as a danger to herself. While she was there, Michelle and I researched rehab centers and visited several before choosing one. Treatment had to be voluntary, and I hoped we could convince her to go. This was 7 years ago. As I prepared to walk Holly down the aisle to marry her boyfriend of 4 years, I thought about those events. It was a tough journey, but we mostly made it through. Michelle and I are still happily married. Johnny recently turned 15 and idolizes her older sister. She looks beautiful in her purple satin dress as Holly's maid of honor. She's not allowed to date yet, but there are a few boys she talks about, and she's had a boyfriend or two, but only during school hours. Amelia is 5 and idolizes Johnny almost as much as Johnny idolizes Holly. She will start school soon and is already reading some basic words thanks to her big sister's bedtime stories. Tamara is 3 and never sits still until she falls asleep. One minute she's running around and the next she's lying on the sofa. Every evening I carry her to her crib. I found my beautiful wife already seated, sharing the mother of the bride seat with Becky. Becky's husband Martin is sitting right behind them. Her first attempt at rehabilitation didn't go well, but after she got several illnesses and passed out a few times, she sought help on her own, and this time it worked. Michelle is 8 months pregnant, and she looks more beautiful every day. If you're wondering, yes, it's another girl. We're still deciding on names, but there's a good chance Aunt Lori will get her namesake. Of course, sometimes I miss Becky, the woman I married and the plans we had. I always thought we would be married for 50 years and watch generations of family members pass through our home, but it wasn't meant to be. Still, we're all friends and even spend a day with Becky and Martin once every month or two. It's not what I expected, but it's a good life. Thanks for listening to One Infidelity Hit. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop us a like.